Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for taking the time out to come and listen to what is going to be a whistle-stop tour of what is usually a 4-hour presentation squashed down into 20 minutes. My name is James Tingay. I'm the Group Marketing Manager for Eurofins E&E UK. We are here on stand H7, so at the end of the presentation, if anybody has any questions or you want to come and talk to us about anything I've covered, please pop down H7. The graphics I'm going to show you today, the snake as we call it, is on the wall on our stand, and have a chat with us. Right at the very end of the presentation, there is a slide if you want to scan that for some CPD credits. That's in at the end. So, without further ado, this presentation is designed to give you a flavour of a roadmap we've created over the last 4 or 5 years based on our experience with our customers coming to us saying, I'd like my product EMC tested. So if someone comes to us and said, I'd like my product EMC tested, our first response is, no, you don't. You don't want your product EMC tested. What you want to do is have an idea, up in the corner here, and place it on the market. At the end of the day, as a manufacturer of products, that's what you're here to do. Design a product, place it on the market, make some money. How do you get there? How do you get all the way through? Well, I've got a big idea. For those of you that have had the unfortunate delight of listening to me talking, I will use the example of a mains-powered underwater basket weaving machine. It's got Bluetooth on it, and it might be a medical device. So EMC, safety, radio, cybersecurity, wireless connectivity, machinery, it's a medical device. It covers everything. It's all the worst aspects of everything in there. But I've got this idea, and I want to get it onto the market. And this presentation has been developed because what we find is customers will come to us with an idea. They'll come to us halfway through the stage, and they'll go, I want EMC testing. Well, EMC testing is stage 8 of the 15 stages. Oh, 14 stages, sorry, I should say 14 stages. There's going to be a BuzzFeed moment in a BuzzFeed headline in a second for those of you that know what that is. And you've got this idea, and you want it and you say, I want EMC testing. You go, well, you don't, because what about all the other things that you need to do? What about all the other things you have to think about before you get to the point of putting this product on the market and delivering it to your customers? And there's lots and lots of examples of why this is really, really key. As a product gets delivered into a market, for example, as we're no longer part of the European Union, you ship a product into Europe, it arrives in the port in Rotterdam, someone goes, I'm going to inspect your product, I'm going to see whether it's compliant. What are they looking at? They're looking at the packaging, they're looking at the labelling, they're looking at the documentation that you supplied with it. They don't care whether it's met a particular clause of IEC 61010 or 62368. They've got no idea. But they're looking at the administrative compliance, your declaration of conformity, your product information that you've supplied with it. And we'll talk about declaration of conformity shortly, but just to give you an example of why this is important, we do research every 2 or 3 months. We take a set of declaration of conformities from our customers and from the market and wider, and we review them. And last week we reviewed 36 randomly selected products from across the market. Audience participation time. How many of those declarations of conformity were correct and would allow you to legally place your product on the market? Who thinks all of them were correct? Good answer. Who thinks more than one was correct? And who thinks none of them were correct? None of them were correct. None of them were correct. Now, some of them were very minor. Some of them were things like the amendment to the Roche Directive. Who signs a declaration of conformity? Has anybody signed a declaration of conformity? It's a legally binding statement that your product meets the requirements to put a CE mark on it. Your declaration of conformity is wrong. You're not allowed to put a CE mark on your product. It arrives in Rotterdam, someone pulls it out and goes, oh, hang on a minute, this is missing the Roche Amendment, or this is missing Low Voltage Directive, or this is the wrong colour, because everyone we've seen for the last 30 years has been green, and this is a red one. Why is it red? Where is the Roche declaration for the red paint? What do you mean you don't have it? £250,000 machine goes back in the container, back across the North Sea to the UK, gets stripped down, repainted and shipped back again. Not something you want to be doing as a manufacturer. So this is a really kind of step through how we see the world of compliance and the steps you should take to go through that and think about. You don't have to do all of them, but you have to think about them. For those of you that know what BuzzFeed is, 99% of people forget step 15. Who knows what BuzzFeed is? Is it just me? John, put your hand up, please. Thank you. 99% of people, 14 steps. 99% of people forget step 15. Does anybody want to guess what step 15 is? Ongoing compliance. You've designed your product, you've CE marked it, you've placed it on the market, you've done all this work, you've spent hours and hours and hours making sure all it's technically correct, you've tested it, it works, everything's great. And then you put it on the market. 4 years later, the low voltage directive has changed, the EMC directive has changed, EN 55035 has changed, but you're still placing it on the market with a declaration of conformity that's out of date, and it gets stopped at customs. Doesn't matter whether it's technically correct. A piece of paper says, nah, I haven't bothered to update my documentation. The person that signed them has left. Or even worse, and this is an example, the person who signed the declaration of conformity has died, and that product has still been placed on the market. Who's legally responsible for that? Well, they're dead. Oh dear. Okay, well, directors of the business, you need to sort yourself out. So this is key. People forget about ongoing compliance. So we're going to step through these. We're out of time, and I'm going to send a couple of examples as we go through. So, the big idea. I think there's a market for a mains-powered underwater basket weaving machine in Uzbekistan. What's the market? Well, there's a basket weaving industry in Uzbekistan. And is anybody from Uzbekistan, before I offend anybody about basket weaving machines? No? Okay, good. What's the market? It's basket weaving machines. I think there's a market for that product. Okay, presumably as a product developer, a product designer, you thought about the fact of your market. Who are they? What are they? And it's not just about the market itself. It's about the demographics. And we're not talking about male, female. We're talking about, is this a medical device? Is it a toy? Does it fall under EN 71? If it's a medical device, then you're going to have to go through medical device certification to place it on the market in the EU. A bone saw. A bone saw. Anyone broken their arm? You don't, weird things on arms, put on kids' arms these days. When I broke my arm when I was 7 years old, you got a big plaster put on your arm. And when you went to have your plaster taken off, they took this big thing, there was a spinny bone saw, and they cut it, and it spun round. They don't do that, they vibrate them now. But bone saw, if it's used on a cadaver, it's not a medical device. If it's used on a living person, it's a medical device. It's exactly the same product. It's exactly the same thing. But by changing the market and understanding what your market requires, you can decide whether it's a medical device or not. Hopefully it isn't. But my underwater basket weaving machine hopefully isn't a medical device. What process do you need? What process do you need to go through to get your product to market? What's the conformity assessment process? For any of you that have used a notified body for anything, it's big, it's complex, it's expensive. It could be the self-declaration. It could be that you literally self-declare against the requirements of CE marking, place it on the market in the EU. I'm not going to talk about UKCA. Someone always smiles when I say UKCA. But for anyone that's put a UKCA mark on their product, I'm sorry. We did try to convince the government not to do it, but oh, yeah, there we go. Do you need to test? Anybody from a test house in the room, apart from my friend down here? There is no requirement in any CE marking directive for you to test your product. The EMC directive does not say you must test your product. It does not say you must put it in an EMC chamber and test it. Low voltage directive does not say you must test your product. Radio equipment directive does not say you must test your product. It doesn't say that anywhere in it. What it says is you must demonstrate that you meet all the essential requirements of the directive. How do you do that? More than likely you're going to test it, but you don't actually need to test it. And that's a weird thing for us to say as a test house, but you don't actually need to do it. And if anybody says to you, you have to test your product, they don't really know what they're talking about because they haven't thought about all of these steps. So do you need to test it? Okay, how do you demonstrate that you can meet all the essential requirements of the CE marking, relevant CE marking directives? You've got to test it. Probably you've got to test it. What and how? So we're getting quite close to the middle bit of I want EMC testing. So we're at step 6. What and how do you need to test? This is really, really important. Really, really important. And again, I'm slightly controversial, I work for a test house. We are UCAS accredited to ISO 17025. An ISO 17025 accredited test lab should not tell you what to test and how to test it. It's a conflict of interest within ISO 17025, and it's explicitly written in that standard that should not be a conflict of interest. So the test lab should not be telling you what to test and how to test it. You, as the manufacturer, should know that. Wow, okay, that's a few stunned faces. People going, the test lab told me. Well, they shouldn't be. It's a conflict of interest. It's marking your own homework. If you then go anywhere near a notified body, it's even more serious. So you need to know, and there are ways to do this, and you can come and talk to us later on, we'll tell you how to do it. But you need to know what to test, because the test lab will expect you to walk in with a product and go, here's my product, test it. And you go, thanks very much. Have you got a strategy? EMC strategy, safety strategy, testing strategy. Have you built a strategy for your products, or are you doing it on the hoof? Are you doing this product today, next product next week? Think about a strategy. Think about product families. One of my colleagues from one of our competitors, Mike Darby's in the room next door, talking about radio equipment directives and things. There are lots of people here that make modules for communications, wireless modules, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. Think about modular approvals. Can you use a module that and you can then carry the approval over to the next product you're making? Testing, it's the boring bit. Stick it in a chamber, works. Okay, fine. The boring bit. Sorry, John. Test results. So you put your product into a test lab, and the test lab says, you say to them, test my product, please. And they go, we've tested it. There's your test results. What do you do with the test results? You look at them and see if the product has actually passed. Because, and I'll give you another example. I live in Scarborough. I live near the seaside. Salt water, gets windy, gets a bit miserable at times, gets nice and sunny in the summer. There was a machine, a product in the Sea Life Centre in Scarborough. It's no longer there because they took it out. And it's called a tornado simulator. So if anybody sees one of these things, don't go anywhere near it. It's the worst thing we've ever seen. Somebody came to us and said, can you check it? We want to place it on the market in the UK and in Europe. Can you check it for us? Can you have a look at it for us? Once our safety guys had stopped laughing at it, we asked them for the test report. And they said, oh, we've got a test report. It was done by Eurofins in the United States. Oh, great, send it over. We'll have a look at it. So over comes the test report. Every single clause of the report said, failed. But we've got a test report. I've got a test report. But it failed every single thing. But you still put it on the market. We've got a test report. Brilliant. So check your test results, please. Are they correct? Is it passing all the clauses? Don't accept a product where someone has put not applicable as part of the test report. We've seen products, food blenders, where for a food blender, there is a test that the interlock works to stop the blade spinning when the lid is removed. So you can't stick your fingers in the food blender. This test report we saw said the test to make sure you can't stick your fingers in and the interlock works, not applicable. Why was it not applicable? Because they didn't want to do it, or they couldn't do it. But we've got a test report, so hey, well done, great. We can stick a CE mark on our product, or we can write a declaration of conformity, and we can have a technical file. Right. Don't buy those kind of products. So, check your test results. Are they correct? Are they accurate? Is it giving you what you need? Third-party certification. Talking primarily about the EU and the UK, and I'll make a comment about that in a second. But if you're thinking about placing your product on the market anywhere else in the world, Uzbekistan, for example, maybe in Uzbekistan they require different certification. Maybe they require in-country approval. Maybe they require something else. Australia needs an RCM mark on it. Brazil requires in-country testing. If anyone's selling a product into Brazil that hasn't been tested in Brazil, and you're relying on UK European certification for that, that is not compliant with Brazilian market rules. And it can be stopped at customs, and it can be destroyed by customs in Brazil. They can just destroy it. They can literally take it and destroy it. Brazil legally requires in-country testing to place a product on the market in Brazil. There's a few puzzled faces in the room. Interesting. So, third-party certification. What do you need? Have you thought about it? And we go back to the strategy. Testing to an EN standard. I want my product EMC testing to an EN standard. Okay. Test lab goes, you told us what you want testing to, so we've tested it. You then try and send it to Australia, and they go, where's your regional deviations from your IEC standard? Oh, we didn't do IEC standard, we did EN standard. Well, you need to go back and do it again. So in your testing strategy, think about this up front. But then your third-party certification can take a considerable amount of time. A CB report for safety, an NRTL for the US and Canadian markets, other third-party certifications that you need to place your products on those markets can take a long time, particularly if you're going for a CB and it goes to the CB assessor and they go, we don't like this. Nothing you can do about it. They don't like it. They'll send it back. So think about this up front. Administrative compliance. Wow. This is where people fall down. They genuinely fall down here. And because you can't place a CE mark on a product without a declaration of conformity, and you can't create a declaration of conformity without having a technical file. Those things, that's the truth. Those are the facts. And we see so many products. You say, okay, you put a CE mark on it, yeah, where's your declaration of conformity? There you go. That's not a declaration of conformity. It says certificate of conformity. It's not the same thing. Where's your technical file? Oh, what, sorry? Where's your technical file? We don't have one. Well, then you can't put declaration of conformity and you can't label your product. How have you placed it on the market? And this is where people fall down. They fall down because they don't understand that this is as important as this. This is where people get caught out when things arrive in customs. When things arrived in the port in Rotterdam, a box of television that's come from Japan, they don't go, oh, I wonder if the USB works. I wonder if it's got really good high definition. I wonder if the dynamic range is good on the picture when I'm watching pixels. They're looking at the labeling. They're looking at the paperwork. This is massively important, and this is where people go wrong, and they fell down because they don't do their administrative compliance properly. Reviewing technical files, reviewing the declaration of conformity. Is your declaration of conformity right? Okay, pop quiz time. I have a product, low voltage directive. It's mains powered, it's got Bluetooth on it, and it's got some active electronics. So we're covering this under the EMC directive, the low voltage directive, and the radio equipment directive. So the three things that we state on our declaration of conformity. Correct? Do I require all three things on my declaration of conformity? Low voltage, EMC, radio equipment. Do I have all three things on my declaration of conformity? Who thinks we do? Who thinks we don't? Who doesn't want to admit that they don't want to answer the question? Everybody else. Gentleman at the front here. Correct. The only thing that you should have on your declaration of conformity is the radio equipment directive, because the EMC directive and the low voltage directive are called up by the radio equipment directive. So we shouldn't have them multiplied. ROSH, that's always missing from people's declaration. It's required for placing a product on the market in the EU. Cybersecurity. Placing a product on the market on the GB market. PSTI. Who's got a PSTI declaration for their product? Who knows what PSTI is? Who doesn't know what PSTI is? PSTI is a legal requirement for placing a product on the market in the GB market to do with cybersecurity. It's been in place for more than a year. People don't know about it. So actually, strictly speaking, none of your products, if they fall under the scope of that, can be legally placed on the market in Great Britain. Everyone writing this down? Everyone taking notes? Everyone going to go away and go, oh God, what did he say about that? Labelling. Declaration of conformity, labelling. Placing a CE mark on your product. You send the product to a test lab and you say, I want you to test this to 62368 safety, or 61010 for safety. And part of that standard says, review the label on the product. You get your test report back, and in the test report it says the label is compliant with the requirements of 62368. Is that enough to place a CE mark on your product? Hint, the answer is no. Okay? Because they're only checking it for the safety standard. They're not checking it against everything else you need to do. Where's your wheelie bin for Wii? Where's your ROSH? Where's your manufacturer's details? That's not part of the safety standard. So again, you get your results back and you go, great, I can put CE mark on my product. No, you can't. Because when it arrives in Rotterdam and they go, this has got no manufacturer's details on it. We don't know who made it. We don't know where it's going. We don't know what it's here for. It doesn't come into the European Union. And the way things are going in the world, avoiding anything political, that's going to get worse because there's going to be more focus on border control for products coming in and out of the country, in and out of the EU, in and out of the UK, in and out of the US, in and out of China. It's going to get more and more. We get to the end and we place it on the market and we deliver it to our customer and our customer's happy. And we make some money and we continue to make that product and we carry on making the product. We don't change it. We don't change anything in the product. And about 10 years later, someone says, your declaration of conformity is out of date. Who signed it? Oh, that person's dead. Oh, dear me. It's not compliant. You can't place it on the market. Ongoing compliance, making sure it's up to date, continues to be up to date. Standards change. EU directives change. Legislation changes. We are not subject to EU legislation for the GB market. Some legislation has been transposed into UK law, but actually we're not subject to EU legislation because we're not part of the EU. We have our own legislation in the UK, and the two things are slightly different. There is a difference between one part of the radio equipment regulations in the UK and the radio equipment directive in the EU. They are different. They're not the same thing. So if you're putting a CE mark on a product to place it on the GB market, you're under the auspices of UK legislation, but that doesn't allow you to do this because that doesn't exist and that doesn't, okay, if you're in the two CE marks, digital labeling, two different bits of digital labeling, the UK version and the European version. Organized chaos. So this is where this is really important. This is where this is really important. Ensuring that your documentation is correct. We talk about technical standards, we talk about testing, we talk about standards for EMC and radio and safety and all these kind of cybersecurity things. But if you don't keep it up to date and maintain it, your product can't continue to be placed on the market and you run into problems. And we review them, we review the declarations, and we sit in this one. This who signed this? Oh, that person's dead. Oh, well, why have you not changed it? I used to sign declarations of conformity in the company I used to work for before Eurofins. As soon as I left, my name came off them because I don't work there anymore. You can't place a product on the market using a declaration that has somebody who's no longer legally entitled to sign it. Do you check them? Do you update them? Do you maintain the fact that the standards have changed and your product no longer meets the technical requirements of the EU directives? That usually takes me 4 hours to go through, with lots of pictures and lots of little analogies around the side. It's a whistle-stop tour through. But hopefully, this has been developed over the last 4 or 5 years based on people coming to us saying, I want my product EMC testing. When you actually go back, and I did this personally about a month ago, I went back and I sat down with the customer and I said, what do you actually want to do? What is your product? Where do you want to sell it? What's your market? They needed EMC, safety, radio compliance, cyber security, because it was transmitting patient data. It was a machine, so it was going to move a patient under its own power, so a machinery directive. It could potentially be a medical device, so it might even need medical device certification and approval from a notified body. What else did they need? Oh, it was going to be placed on top of something else that was already powered. So they need to coexistence test it with that to make sure that when you power this thing up, it doesn't fold your patient in half and break their back. I hadn't thought about, but, oh no, we want EMC testing. No, you don't. What you want to do is that, from the start to the end. Right, I've gone 2 minutes over. Don't we have any questions? Have I scared anybody witless that they want to go home and cry into a bucket? Does anybody have any questions they want to ask? PSTI, yes. Yeah, come and have a chat. Well, I'll explain PSTI to you. Yeah, cybersecurity is an interesting one because of the way that the the legislation has been written. Unfortunately, because a lot of the new things for cybersecurity that's coming out of the EU exists post the transition from EU to UK legislation, it's not incorporated into UK legislation. So we already have a divergence there. So the cybersecurity requirements for the EU and the UK are different, which is where we get into this complication about things like CE marking, because CE marking is a EU thing, and by putting a CE mark on your product, you're saying, oh, I meet the requirements of the EU directives. But if there's a difference between the EU directives or the EU legislation and UK legislation, you run into trouble with having to put those two things on. So I mentioned digital labelling as well. Digital labelling for products is coming in the EU reasonably quickly, not so quickly for electronic products. But the UK government has stated that their view of digital labelling will be different to the EU's. So you can put a label on for the EU to evidence your CE marking so it can link to some documentation, but the same QR code can't be used for the UK. So you have two. So rather than just having one CE mark on, you'll have to have one CE mark, two QR codes, and if there's a difference in legislation... Oh, sorry, quick question. Who's put a UKCA mark on their product already? Who thinks the UKCA mark doesn't exist anymore? Who doesn't care? UKCA still exists. If UK legislation diverges from EU legislation significantly, you will have to go back to putting a UKCA mark on your product if you're placing it on the England, Scotland and Wales markets. Anyone make anything in Northern Ireland? The worst possible case is a medical device manufactured in Northern Ireland. It's beyond ridiculous. But the requirements are different. The requirements could diverge between UK and EU legislation significantly, that you have to put a UKCA mark back on your product because CE marking doesn't permit it to be. So watch out for that. That'll be an interesting one to have a conversation about. Yes, right.
How do you see the regulation in the UK to be? Thank you. How do you see the regulation in the UK to be? In Europe, it's very clear, CE mark. Mm-hmm. Then we have the regulation. In the UK, BSTI and EU regulation, mm-hmm. and UKCI. Mm-hmm. So how do you think it would be the case in the UK?
The honest answer and is okay. Is there anybody here that works for the UK government? I want to admit, which department do you work for?
Ministry of Defence.
Okay, you're not DBT or BAYS, good, because I'm going to be really mean about them in a minute. So the problem is that a lot of legislation was transposed from EU into UK law, and it allowed the CE mark to be used. That's the most recent one, is to allow the CE mark to be used to demonstrate conformity for products placed on the UK market, well, GB market, because Northern Ireland is different under the Windsor framework. The problem is that things have been introduced into EU legislation that don't exist in UK legislation. So the EU could say, we want products that are CE marked to be painted blue. Every product that has a CE mark on it's got to be painted blue. EU legislation, blue. The UK government go, we don't like blue, we like green. So every product placed on the UK market has got to be green. Nothing to do with the EU whatsoever, nothing to do with CE marking, but then you can't use CE marking for the UK because you can't place a blue product. And when you sit down and talk to them about it, and we have done, and I have done, and my colleagues have done at great length, and you say things like, that doesn't allow you to place a product. Strictly speaking, as we sit right now, if you're 100% pedantic, you can't use a CE mark to place a product on the GB market. The legislation, if you go back and look and read, please don't, it's incredibly tedious, but if you read the legislation to the finest detail, there is a clause in there that prevents you from using a CE mark to put a product on the GB market. It's in the legislation because nobody saw it and nobody noticed and nobody thought about it. So well done, UK government. And when you sit and talk to them about it, they go, oh, yeah, I didn't mean to do that. And then the guidance that's published on the DBT BAYS website, if anybody goes and looks at the guidance on using a UKCA mark and a CE mark, the guidance is wrong. It's wrong. It's written wrong. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't allow you to place products on the market. because what they do is the people that write the legislation don't write the guidance, and they don't talk to each other, and they misrepresent information. They put commas in the wrong place and things like that, but it's wrong information. It's fundamentally wrong. And we talk to them about it, and we badger them incessantly. So hopefully, generally, there isn't that much divergence, but there is divergence, and there could be divergence on things like cybersecurity. Roche could be different. We might decide on different chemicals for the UK, for GB market. We might decide on some different electrical safety standards, particularly with issues around things like e-bikes and lithium-ion batteries and things like that. So there could be divergence. And at the point there is divergence, you can't use a CE mark to demonstrate compliance for the GB market, and you'll have to go back to putting a UK CE mark on your product. And having two separate declarations of conformity, by the way, which is an interesting one, because if you talk to a politician and you say, your declaration of conformity, I'm watching the clock, your declaration of conformity for a product placed on the UK market, GB market, says you comply with EU law. You talk to politicians and you say, that declaration says you comply with EU law. A lot of them are going to go, what? But we've left. We haven't. So it's complicated. So hopefully, I'm going to go to the, hang on, I need to do that for you, for your CPD credits. It's a whistle-stop tour. As I say, I usually do that in about 4 hours, split over 2 sessions, so you don't have to listen to me 4 hours. But there's a lot of detail behind that I haven't covered. If you want to come and have a chat about anything that I put in there, it's on our stand, H7. There's a really big diagram on the wall, version of that on the wall that you can stand and talk to us about. But please come and have a chat. We'll explain some thinking behind it if you want to. Don't all come at once, because there'll be a queue, and I can't talk to everybody. But if anybody's got any questions, I will be on H7. I'll be here for the next 5 or 10 minutes getting on clip from my Britney Spears impression. But thank you for your time. Have a nice day, and enjoy the rest of your presentations.